Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst. In today's video, we are going to discuss in detail about 5 important topics as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your larger understanding of the current affairs. The topics are as follows. We will begin our discussion today by examining the emerging challenges for fiscal federalism and steps that can be taken in this regard. Then we will inquire the reasons behind low research and development funding as prevalent in our country and the causes behind it. After that, we will study in detail about India's fast breeder reactor program, which is the key for India's energy security in the future. It will be followed by study about Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary recently seen in the news. Towards the end, we will read about a new scheme launched by the government called as Pradhan Mantri Suraj Portal. The handout for the discussion will be available in the description of the video for your effective revision. So let's begin. The growing tussle between the states and central governments on the issues of fiscal devolution and autonomy in taxation has emerged as severe challenges for fiscal federalism, which forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the theme of cooperative federalism. So let's first try to understand that what do we mean by this concept of fiscal federalism. Well, we are aware that the governing power in the country has been divided by the constitution itself between the central government and state government under Article 246 of the constitution and 7th schedule, which divides the governing power in union list and state list and concurrent list, and then there exist certain residuary powers. Similarly, the financial power has also been divided between the central and state government, deciding upon that who will be responsible to charge which kind of taxes and how these taxes will be shared among them. This leads to the concept of fiscal federalism under Article 268 of the Constitution, which deals with broader themes such as who will be responsible for collecting which kind of taxes, how these taxes will be shared, and then the transfer of funds or grants which will be provided by the central government to these states for their equitable development. Let's try to understand this with a simpler example of a family which consists of parents and 3 brothers A, B and C. These parents wrote a document called as Constitution where they decided that whatever will be the money which will come inside the house will be equally divided between these brothers for their overall development and growth. These brothers are A, which is the youngest brother or a self-governing institution such as panchayat and municipalities. B is your state governments and C is the eldest of them all or central government. Now let's imagine a scenario where this eldest brother or central government starts misappropriating funds by keeping the larger share of money which was coming inside the house and refuse to devolve these taxes or revenue with the younger brothers. So it is obvious that this younger brother or state government will start complaining that the eldest brother is becoming financially strong at the cost of our deprivation. This is exactly the challenges for the fiscal federalism which has emerged recently. Now, there are certain constitutional provisions which are responsible for these emerging issues, such as under Article 293, which states that if a particular state has taken a loan and that loan is due, then that state shall take permission from the central government before raising further taxes or revenue for the state. Now this means that the central government gets into the big brother position and can impose borrowing limit on these states and curtail their further borrowings, thus compromising the fiscal autonomy of these states. Then there are certain issues associated with GST or Goods and Services Tax, which was introduced under 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016, which aims to provide uniform bracket of taxation across the country. The first issue associated with GST is that it is a destination-based tax, which means that the indirect taxes will be collected in the consuming state and not in the producing state. So let's say that I am a developed, industrialized, producing state and the good from me has been gone to your state and you are basically a consumer state which is not as much industrialized as me. Then you will be charging this GST and appropriating the larger amount of fund, which means that even though I am more developed, I will be deprived of larger share in taxes and thus I will have less fund to expenditure upon themes such as health, education, etc., which will ultimately compromise the overall development of my state. Thus, various industrialized states such as Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala has been opposing the integrated GST. The second issue is the undermined role of states in GST Council. Now, GST Council established under Article 279A governs the various tax slips under GST and other tax decisions. Now, no tax decision can be taken by the GST Council unless and until it has 75% majority. But as the central government has voting share of 33%, it gives central government a kind of a virtual monopoly or veto power in GST Council, which basically means that no decision can be taken in GST Council without the approval of the central government. However, keep this in mind that as per the recent judgment of Supreme Court, states are not mandatorily need to implement the decision of GST Council. Another issue associated with GST is the untimely payment of GST dues, where several states such as West Bengal has complained that the central government is not paying them their GST dues on time and thus they lack the fund to implement several schemes. Then there is issue of increasing cess and surcharges. What are cess and surcharges? Cess and surcharges are basically the non-divisible pool of taxes or the revenue which is kept by the central government completely and is not shared with the state governments, such as cess on road infrastructure or tobacco products, etc. Now, this cess and surcharges has been increasing from 13% in 2014 to 18% in 2022. All these factors such as GST issues and increasing cess and surcharges have led to decline in the ability of the state governments to finance their current expenditure, thus decline in their fiscal autonomy. Now keep this in mind that the larger share of expenditure on essential social sector such as health, education, etc. lies with the state government. Now, because they cannot increase further indirect taxes as they have already been subsumed under GST, the state government's ability to increase the expenditure have also declined. And thus, now their ability to finance their current expenditure has declined from 69% in 1955 to 38% in 2022. which means that out of 100 rupees which these central governments are, state governments are spending, out of that only 38 rupees comes from their own sources of revenue. Thus, various states such as Kerala, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, West Bengal are raising this issue of fiscal federalism and its decline over the years. Another cause is that if we will see the gross tax revenue of central government, it has increased from 14.6 lakh crore in 2015-16 to staggering 33.6 lakh crore in the year of 2023 and 24. And at the same time, the state share in this revenue has increased only from 5.1 lakh crore to 10 lakh crore. Thus, the central government is encompassing a large amount of wealth, but at the same time, the state share in this revenue is increasing with a very slow pace. Also, the grant in aids which are provided under Article 275 to underdeveloped states or states which are in dire need of funds, it has actually declined from 1.95 lakh crore in 2015 to 1.65 lakh crore in 23-24. Then there is the rising issue of increasing number of centrally sponsored schemes, which numbers 131. Centrally sponsored scheme means that the central government shares 60% of the funds and state governments, if not hilly states or northeastern states, they are required to grant 40% of the funds. Now, these centrally sponsored schemes are given more primacy over the state government's schemes, such as MG Narega, National Food Security Act 2013, etc. And 25 to 40% of the state expenditure is actually gone to match the central grant under these centrally sponsored schemes, which ultimately compromise the electoral mandate where the people of the state have actually elected their government because they think that this government will be more responsible for my needs. Then there are certain challenges which are associated with Finance Commission, which is established under Article 280 and has the responsibility of vertical devolution between center and state and horizontal distribution between the state governments. Now, this horizontal distribution between the state government is done on various parameters, one of it being that the 45% tax devolution is done on the basis of income distance. What do we understand by income distance? Income distance is basically the income of a state, let's say UP, and the distance it has from the state which has the highest per capita income, let's say that is Maharashtra. So the longer this distance will be, the higher the funds the Uttar Pradesh will get, which means basically that the developed states are given less taxes, which is also reflected from the infographic, where for every rupees which state government sent to the central taxes, they got the return, and that return is as low as 0.08 rupees for Maharashtra, 0.57 for Kerala, while for the state of Bihar it is up to 7 rupees. However, the central government gives counter argument on this by stating that as per the multidimensional poverty index, only 0.7% population of Kerala is multidimensionally poor, while more than 50% population of Bihar is multidimensionally poor. Thus, it is obvious that Bihar needs more funds and grants, and so it is provided for the equitable distribution of development across the country. Then If we look particularly at the Kerala's case study or the demands and issues which are being raised by the Kerala, then the under Article 293 of the Constitution, the government has put a net borrowing ceiling on the state governments where they can only lend up to 3% of their state's GDP. However, the central government has adopted a big brother attitude and has curtailed not only the net borrowing ceiling as well as the off-budget borrowing for various states including Kerala. The Kerala is giving the argument that the public debt of state, it actually falls under the entry 43 of the state list. And recently it has rejected the one-time financial aid of 5,000 crore which was being offered by the central government on the ground that it will be even insufficient to pay the pensions, salaries of the government employees. However, on the other hand, the central government has argued that recently it has adopted the trend of fiscal decentralization, which can be seen from the directives of 14th and 15th Finance Commission, which increase the state share in the divisible pool of taxes from earlier 32% to current 42%. At the same time, these finance commissions has provided for higher untied resources, meaning that the states have given more flexibility and autonomy to do the expenditure as per their own needs. Then, the central government has rationalized various centrally sponsored schemes and have clubbed them down to mere 28. At the same time, during the pandemic, central government states that the borrowing limit of the state government was further increased by 2% of GSDP plus 3% of GSDP borrowing, which they are allowed under Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. Then, the Budget 2023 provided for an interest-free loan of up to 1.3 lakh crore for capital expenditure in these states. Also, the government has time and again provided various bailout programs when the state governments has been in the dire need of fund, such as bailout program for the state distribution companies under Uday program. Then there is Team India, or the Governing Council of Niti Aayog, which is chaired by the Prime Minister and consists Chief Minister of all states to envisage and develop a joint vision of India's growth and development, where the state government has also a major say. Despite these efforts, there are several steps which needs to be taken, such as speedy devolution of funds under goods and services taxes to the states so that they can implement various schemes such as MG-Narega. Then higher grant in aids under Article 275 shall be provided to underdeveloped states to bring them at par with developed states. Also, the recommendations of Sarkaria commissions shall be implemented, where it is stated that despite the residuary power of taxation, all other power of taxation shall be given to state governments. At the same time, if central government is making some law on concurrent list item, then it shall consult with the state governments for harmonious development. At the same time, the states shall follow fiscal prudency, where they should discard giving various kind of freebies and shall also increase their own sources of revenue. Also, the 16th Finance Commission needs to review the tax sharing principle by accommodating the principle of Human Development Index when it is considering for the horizontal tax distribution. Thus, as we have seen that the reforms in the fiscal federalism sector of our country seems to be imperative and shall be taken with utmost care by providing more fiscal autonomy to the states. With this suggestion, we move forward to the next news of the day. A recent editorial has highlighted the issue of low research and development funding in India in comparison to other developing economies. This issue of low research and development funding forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of science and technology. Well, the importance of funding in research and development and the importance it holds for our country's overall economic growth, our technological advancements, as well as to ensure global competitiveness is significantly realized by all. But at the same time, before we begin to inquire about the status of low research and development funding in our country, let's first also try to acknowledge the achievements. As per a recent report, it shows India has emerged as the talent pool for academics in the world, as we produce more than 40,000 PhDs annually. Thus, India ranks third globally after USA and China when it comes to the emerging academic talent pool. At the same time, we have also ensured robust achievements in research output, which is shown from more than 3 lakh research publications in 2022, and we rank third globally in terms of research output. At the same time, India has also significantly improved its patent granting system, where it granted more than 30,000 patents in the year of 2022. And thus, India's technological and manufacturing aspirations actually hinge on a transformative shift in its research and development landscape. However, this is undermined by various challenges, and one of them is low research and development funding which exists in our country. For example, India spends only 0.64% of its GDP on research and development, as per Research and Development Statistic released by Department of Science and Technology, which is significantly lower than other emerging and developing economies. As we can see from the table, China spends 2.4%, Germany spends 3.1%, USA spends 3.5%, and South Korea spends up to 4.8% of its GDP on research and development. At the same time, this research and development funding is majorly contributed by the government, up to 64%, where almost 43% of funding comes from the central government, 7% of the funding comes from state government, 8% funding is provided by higher educational institutions such as Indian Institute of Science, Indian Institute of Technology, etc. And only 4% of funding comes from public sector units. Then these fundings are majorly limited to key institutions, as we can see from the infographic, where almost 31% of funding is driven towards DRDO, 19% goes to space, only 3% is for medical research, 7% is for science and technology, and up to 10% is for Department of Atomic Energy. But at the same time, what we can see from the infographic is absence of diversified and emerging sections of technology such as big data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. Then the private sector comprises of only 36%, which stands in contrast to the global trend, where the sector private sector contributes up to 65% of total research and development funding. We all are aware about the immense work which has been done by SpaceX led by Elon Musk in increasing the capacity of space sector in USA. This issue of low funding in research and development has several causes, such as India facing high fiscal deficit, which means that the government does not have adequate money to fund various kinds of science projects in emerging technologies such as nanotechnology, biotechnology, etc. At the same time, remember that we are a socialist country, which means that the government has additional responsibility to face challenges such as poverty, health issues, pandemic, etc. That is why you always hear this question around that does the poverty of our country is going to be cured from Chandrayaan-3 mission? At the same time, these deep science technology missions such as Mars mission of SpaceX has long gestation period and requires a large amount of seed funding, thus basically making them unprofitable for the larger section of private companies who does not invest in such projects because of high cost to output ratio. At the same time, in our country, there exists a weak patent system under Indian Patent Act of 1970, making it unreliable to safeguard the commercial innovations, and at the same time, there are challenges of imitations by the local competitors itself. For example, I am not going to design and invest in making a great Nike Air Jordan shoes if I know that a cheap copy of that shoes will be available next day in the market. At the same time, we have lack of high quality research in our institutions, which is caused because of several reasons, such as these institutions have to follow a kind of a fiscal discipline which is imposed by the central government. Then they face a lot of challenges in actually equipping themselves with the laboratory and various kind of technology requirements. And at the same time, these universities are lacking in talent pool because of the issue of brain drain, where the bright minds of India, such as a person who has qualified for IIT, is actually going to foreign universities such as MIT or Cambridge because of better infrastructure and growth opportunities. Then there exists the grave issue of underutilization of funds, which is also caused by several reasons such as bureaucratic apathy or red tapeism, where these institutions do not get funds on time, and also these institutions lack in the financial capability to perform big research and development projects such as large hadron corridor which exist in Europe. Thus, India, there are several bigger issues such as hunger and disease control, as we saw, leading to high fiscal deficit, and also there is low private participation which exists because of several reasons. To address these challenges, we need to take several steps, such as the government has established a national deep technology startup policy under which the government is going to emphasize its share of funding for the deep technology startup related to big data, nanotechnologies, blockchain, artificial intelligence, etc. At the same time, the government has launched a National Research Foundation which will act as a coordinating body between researchers, private sector, high educational institutions and government, under which the government is going to establish a 50,000 crore corpus till the year of 2028, of which 28% share will come from government and 72% share will actually come from private industries. Then the government has recently allowed for 100% foreign direct investment in the space sector. Also, the government has launched a Bharat 6G vision document which envisages to promote local manufacturing of telecommunication equipments. Then the government has also launched an Aneek program under which 1 crore fund is provided to develop innovations and technologies related to women-centric challenges. Also, there are Atal Tinkering Labs, which is an initiative of Niti Aayog under Atal Innovation Mission, where we are trying to inculcate curiosity among young minds and to create a future pool of talent for our country's future. At the same time, there are also certain steps which shall be taken for better research and development funding in our country, such as to increase the budgetary allocation from 0.6% to 2% of GDP as it was envisaged under National Policy on Science and Technology 2013. Also, we need to promote manufacturing in our country under Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thus, the industries will get incentive to further invest in the growing industries. Also, we need to create an information sharing portal where the information will be provided on any new innovation which has been made, or if there has been a new patent which has been guaranteed. All that can be provided to researchers, academia, to the industries through a uniform portal. Then we need to create and further strengthen the government, industry and academia framework, and the use of it we have already seen in the development of co-vaccine during pandemic. Also, a major share of corporate social responsibility funds can be driven for development of technology, especially deep tech technologies such as blockchain and artificial intelligence. At the same time, we can adopt the subscription model of European Union, where let's say a student A can enroll into a particular course by paying a monthly subscription. And if the student does not like that particular field, let's say artificial intelligence, then after 1 month that student A can adopt for a different field, which will be completely different in our country, where we just take one particular stream, let's say computer science, and even though if we have not developed any liking for it, we need to continue in that stream for our whole life. Thus, we can actually adopt for this subscription model, and then we can actually start developing a kind of a particular talent and specialization in these young minds as per their interest. Also, to ensure these companies that if they are going to invest in such big gestation projects, then they will also get a certain insured amount, we can establish escrow accounts. What are escrow accounts? Escrow accounts are basically that if A and B has filed a deal, then A guarantees certain funds to B that you will get this by the end of the project completion, and this fund is set up with a third body, that is C. So these funds can also be established to ensure guaranteed returns to the private sector, so they start getting involved in such projects more and more. With these suggestions, we move forward to the next news of the day. The second stage of India's 3-stage nuclear program got a boost with the commencement of core loading at country's first indigenous fast breeder reactor at Kalpakkam, Tamil Nadu. What is core loading? Core loading is basically placing the nuclear fuel assemblies inside the nuclear reactor. This marks the first step towards achieving criticality. Criticality is basically when there is going to be initiated a self-sustaining nuclear fission chain reaction, which is ultimately going to produce around 500 megawatt of electricity by this Kalpakkam nuclear power plant. This forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of Science and Technology and Nuclear Energy. So one might be curious that what is India's three-stage nuclear program and what is this fast breeder reactor? Well, India's three-stage nuclear program is based upon three-phase nuclear program as envisaged by none other than Homi J. Bhabha, who is also considered as the father of India's nuclear energy. So let's first try to understand the first stage of our nuclear program. India's first stage of nuclear program works upon pressurized heavy water reactor, where natural uranium or uranium-235 is used as a fuel to generate this self-sustaining fissile reaction, which ultimately provides us with nuclear energy, and the moderator is a heavy water or deuterium DTO. Keep this in mind that deuterium is nothing but an isotope of hydrogen. What is isotope? Isotope is nothing but the same form of element which has same number of protons but different number of neutrons in the nuclei. Thus, the atomic mass of an element, which is calculated by number of proton and number of neutron, will vary, giving to various kind of isotopes of a same element, such as deuterium, which is the isotope of hydrogen. Now with this reaction, this pressurized heavy water reactor, we can extract the plutonium-239, which is basically a fissile material, by the reprocessing of the spent fuel. Keep this information in your mind. Currently, we have 22 commercial reactors in our country which works upon the principle of pressurized heavy water reactor with the installed capacity of 6,780 megawatt, such as Kakrapar in Rajasthan and Tarapur in the state of Maharashtra. So, while we have understood that we can extract the plutonium-239 from the spent fuel which is used in the first stage, let's see how it becomes useful for us in the second stage. The second stage of our nuclear program works upon a fast breeder reactor. To understand which, let's first try to understand what is the difference between a fissile material and a fertile material. A fissile material is basically the one which can be directly used as a nuclear fuel. And what are the examples of such fertile fuel? Such as uranium-233, uranium-235, which is a natural uranium, and plutonium-239, which we are using in our first pressurized heavy water reactor. Then there are certain fertile materials such as uranium-238 and thorium-232. These fertile materials needs to be converted into the fissile material before they can be used. Keep this statement very dear to you for the upcoming prelims that uranium-235 is the only fissile isotope that occurs naturally. Now, in our fast breeder reactor, we are going to use a mixed oxide fuel. This mixed oxide fuel contains of plutonium-239 and uranium-238. Now this plutonium-239 is a fissile material, thus it will undergo fission and produce nuclear energy. But now you might be wondering that why we are using this uranium-238, which is actually fertile. It needs to be converted into fissile. Thus, we will keep this uranium-238 as a blanket around the fuel core, which will actually undergo the nuclear transmutation. To understand this, keep with me that we have actually a core of a breeder reactor which contains fissile, uranium, plutonium, atoms, etc. Now, the neutrons which are released during these fast breeder reactions are absorbed by the blanket of a fertile uranium core, that is uranium-238. Now, this fertile uranium is actually harder to split than the fissile uranium, and thus it will ultimately turns into a plutonium, that is plutonium-239. Thus, this uranium-238, which was basically a fertile material, under fast breeder reactor will convert into what? Into a fissile material, that is plutonium-239. And thus, this particular reactor will start producing more fuel than it actually had. Thus, it will actually produce more energy than the fuel it is going to consume, by creating a self-sustaining chain reaction, where the plutonium-239 will be deployed. It will eventually lead to the breaking of uranium-238 blanket. It will transmutate, it will convert itself into a fissile material, that is plutonium-239, and this reaction will keep on going. Now, when we have actually created a large agency of plutonium-239, then in our third stage, what we can do is we can start using fertile thorium TH232 and replace it with uranium-238. So instead of uranium-238 blanket core, we will replace it by thorium-232. And thus it will again start converting into plutonium-239, which is fissile, and there will be a self-sustained reaction. Now the question arises that why we are trying to use thorium-232 in our third stage. The reason being that in India we have very less resources of natural uranium, while we have abundantly available resources of thorium TH232. That is the reason that why we are trying to switch to third stage, because we have abundant resources of thorium. Then these both fissile and fertile isotopes are precious commodities, and we use here pressurized heavy water reactor which uses the natural uranium, and this is we have already studied. Now, another important statement from the prelims perspective is that unlike the conventional reactors such as pressurized heavy water reactor, this fast breeder reactor uses liquid sodium instead of heavy water or deuterium. The sodium does not slow the neutrons like water and are more readily absorbed by the fertile uranium to create plutonium, and this is what we called as transmutation of uranium-238 to plutonium-239. Thus, India's third stage nuclear program, which will be based upon thorium-232. And currently, we are using plutonium-239 and uranium-238 as a mixed oxide fuel. Thus, the thorium reserves which are in our country are very important for our third stage nuclear program. Well, these thorium deposits are found in the placer deposits. What are placer deposits? Placer deposits are basically the concentrated areas of heavy minerals. The heavy minerals which, let's say there is a stream of river, and here were these heavy minerals. Now, because of the activity of gravity, these heavy minerals started depositing due to the action of gravity, and they are called as placer deposits, which are found along streams, rivers, beaches, residual gravels, etc. One of which is thorium, which is extracted from the monazite ore. Now, this monazite ore is basically a phosphate mineral which contains a lot of rare earth minerals, titanium, gold, etc. Now, these thorium reserves are found in these placer deposits across the country, such as in the state of Kerala, in the state of Tamil Nadu, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, in the states of Maharashtra and Gujarat, and also in the inland river beaches of West Bengal, Jharkhand, Odisha, etc. However, naturally, these thorium or monazite reserves are found only in 3 districts, which are Tirunelveli, Thoothukudi and Kanyakumari. Now, under the government's rule, only the Indian Rare Earth Limited, which is basically a wholly owned subsidiary of Department of Atomic Energy, is permitted to produce and process this monazite. Now, keep this in mind that this Indian Rare Earth Limited is solely responsible for production and processing of monazite. So with this limited knowledge, let's try to understand a prelims question which appeared in 2022, which gives us certain statements about monazite, saying that monazite is a source of rare earth. Yes, it is. It contains thorium. Indeed. It occurs naturally in the entire Indian coastal sand. No. In India, the government bodies only can process or export monazite. Yes, that is IREL. So 1, 2 and 4th statement is correct. With this, we have reached to the end of this particular section. So let's try to read about the next news. The Supreme Court recently froze the Assam government's move to denotify the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, which hosts one of the largest rhino population in the country. This forms an important component of your prelims syllabus under the theme of current affairs. So let's try to inquire about this Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary from the angle of prelims. The Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary is in the state of Assam, and it is also known as Mini Kaziranga. The reason being that it has the highest density of one-horned rhinos in the world, and it also holds their second largest population in the state of Assam. Now, closely look at the map that while Kaziranga National Park is on the north bank of Brahmaputra, the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary is on the southern bank. There are also certain other important protected areas in the state of Assam, such as Manas Wildlife Sanctuary, Orang National Park, then there is Dibru-Sakhova National Park, and Lakhova Wildlife Sanctuary. Now, this Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary has a flora of wet savanna kind of flora ecosystem. What do we understand by savanna? Savanna is basically a woodland, grassland ecosystem where two particular trees are at such a width that their canopy does not close. At the same time, unlike prairies of America and steppes of Eurasia, which has cold winters, these savanna kind of grasslands as found in Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary lies in hot tropical climate. Then there are certain different kind of fauna species which are found in Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, such as flying fox, fishing cat and Asiatic water buffalo. But their keystone species is none other than one-horned rhino, which is currently listed as vulnerable on IUCN and thus is provided the highest degree of protection with listing under Schedule 1 under Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. These one-horned rhinos are the only great one-horned rhino which is found in India. There are 5 species of rhino which are found across the world, such as white and black rhinos of Africa, one-horned rhinos of India. Then there are Sumatran and Java rhinos, out of which black rhino, Sumatran and Java rhinos are critically endangered. Keep this in mind that these Sumatran rhinos have already become extinct in the country Malaysia. Then in our country, these one-horned rhinos are found majorly in 3 states, being Assam, West Bengal and Uttar Pradesh. Particularly in the state of Assam, they are found in the protected areas such as Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, which has the highest density, Kaziranga National Park, which has the highest population, and then Orang National Park and Manas National Park. Now, to protect this one-horned rhino species, the Indian government launched Indian Rhino Vision 2020, under which the government aims to increase their population over 3,000 in the state of Assam. Keep these facts dear to you for the upcoming prelims, and we move forward to the last news of the day. Recently, the Pradhan Mantri Suraj Portal was launched by our Honorable Prime Minister to provide credit support to the entrepreneurs from the disadvantaged section of the society. This forms an important component of your GS2 paper under the theme of welfare schemes for the disadvantaged section. So let's try to inquire various provisions of this newly launched scheme. Well, the Pradhan Mantri Samajik Utthan एवं रोजगार आधारित जन कल्याण or Suraj Portal was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister to provide credit support to more than 1 lakh entrepreneurs from the disadvantaged section of the society. Now, under this newly launched scheme, the disadvantaged section has been given a broader meaning as it encompasses the people from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe as well as OBC. Also, the scheme will be extended to the sanitation workers and other socio-economic backward section of the society such as women, minorities or denotified nomadic tribes, etc. Then it will also facilitate credit support to the disabled people who has been left in isolation by their families in old age homes. At the same time, it will also provide support to the elderly people and mentally and physically disabled people. Then this scheme will be available through various channels such as banks, small finance institutions, non-banking financial companies as well as microfinance institutions, etc. Thus, the scheme aims to empower the disadvantaged section of our society and also aims to enhance their financial inclusion for the larger development of the country with the idea Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. With this, we have reached to the end of our session today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video to test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting session very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation and thank you.